I mean, I've worked with McKinsey, and I know when I was also talking to, my ex-team, and McKinsey has lost maybe about 35, 40 people in last 20 years, I mean, last 2 years, you know. Have all these people left for money? Definitely not. I mean, but of course, maybe 5-10% would have. But then, what is it that's making people, leave what they really want to do in life and move to a newer territory, newer domain? Maybe a case in point is to look at, were those organizations being able to retain them or to engage them or to create that stickiness, that could those organizations could they have provided them the challenge that they were looking for, which they founded in some other organization. I'm not going to say startups, but any other organization that they go to, into leadership roles. So so that shift is something that, it's difficult to plan for. You don't know that, when a fence sitter, or when somebody who's not actively looking out, who's not actively pursuing a change, gets converted, and then moves out, and cracking that, and some of those changes really hit you, because you would want your maybe bottom 10-15%. I mean, those exits you wouldn't worry, but then most of these exits really hit you real hard, and there's, I mean, if you ask me, I'm still figuring out a way to how to predict them. Who could be the next in line to take that risk.
So, as I listen to this, I'm just getting a thought here. We keep talking about HR not getting represented in strategic issues and board issues. Maybe this is an opportunity, because if we are talking about accessing talent, if we are talking about incubating talent, we are talking about looking at which are the partnerships that can get created, then all this that the PE funds are doing today, in terms of investing into ideas and basically investing into people, would organizations and therefore HR come in and start investing into these ideas and these people? And would that become the role of HR? Or that will become again a business role, and therefore HR remains out of that?
Do you want me to give you a plain answer to that, or a correct answer to that? It's a very blanket statement, so it may not hold true across the board. But my sense is HR is yet to build that capability where we are having those conversations to reach a level where we are helping a CEO or somebody else take a decision on investing in a business and put $1 billion on the table. This morning I was reading, I think in the Eco Times, Nikesh Arora decides to put in almost 3,000 crores into his own company. Obviously, there is a lot of thought that's gone behind it. Is that kind of thinking process being built in the community as such? I think that's a big question to ask. My 2 cents on how the role is evolving. HR has been a very push role across the board. It's also been a powerful system that's been created over a period of time by virtue of compliance, by virtue of other aspects. A lot of those operational, administrative aspects now are repetitive in nature and being phased out. Now, what is the next big role for HR, which is a pull role? Why does a business leader or somebody who heads a business come to HR today is the big question we need to answer, and how capable we are to do that. So those are a couple of things on my mind, but I'll ask you.
Well, I, to a large extent, agree that, that sort of business alignment and the capability has yet to come to that level to which a CEO would really rely on the head of HR for a business decision as much as they would on a COO or a CFO, for that matter. So, but again, while you were speaking, and I was just thinking, it's like a chicken and egg story, do you get credibility first? Do you get some brownie points and then, prove yourself and then, build that credibility? Or Or, I mean, if you ask me, I mean, the CEOs, what do they really want? I mean, they don't, they essentially, it's a cliche again, but they want to sleep at night, So they want other people to manage their problems. They don't want to deal with those problems. But then, capability is developing capability, and to what you mentioned, I mean, do we have enough frameworks in place where we generate innovation, where we cultivate or foster creativity? Do we really allow people, I mean, in organizations which heavily rely on timesheets to bill their clients, do you really allow people to have, to allow them to put non-chargeable hours to do some other stuff, or are we only allowing to do non-chargeable hours which give you traction on some social media where you do CSR work or something where you can earn mileage out of it, or is it some really innovating work that you really, is your organization, is your structure really really groomed to allow for that? So there are examples, there are organizations that do that, but then has everybody cracked it? Has everybody even started doing it? I would be honest enough to say, I mean, we haven't, at least so far. The innovation is only on getting, okay, how to milk the client, but newer ideas, innovation, not there.
I totally agree with Vikramjit. In fact, a very interesting thing, because today is not about that HR's interest on the business. It's also the collaborative approach which we need to look at, and it is not about that HR's interest on that particular area. It is also that how the overall organization leadership look at it. Today, as a head of the organization, if you find that the role is important and this is a part of my strategy, and what is the ROI I'm going to get out of it, then I think the purpose itself makes a difference. But how many of the HR leaders actually are the right way? He has mentioned that yes, today in my organization it never happens. So I also wonder how many organizations in India does think like that, or rather on a platform where you can engage HR to do something which will lead to an impact to your ROI or the balance sheet is important. And number two is, it is not about, most of the people talk about, in leadership talk about commitment, we need commitment from employees, we need so many things, and so let's do engagement activities. So it becomes less like a trade-off that, okay, I have my training calendars which says that, okay, the compulsory 8 days or 12 days of training has to be done, and that will lead to engagement. It never works in that way, because commitment and engagement works hand in hand, okay? You can't expect people to be committed if they are not engaged, neither if they are not engaged, they are not committed. So it's a collectively exhaustive or mutually exclusive scenario. But what will happen is, over the long term, is that, if you see organizations which are actually able to build these building blocks over the period of time, you will find that yes, the role of HR has not changed. In fact, it's not about only that managing the manpower or the resources or a globally distributed workforce. It is also about how you engage the workforce is also one of the major KPIs. And to me, I think HR's major KPI should be that not only how you retain the talent, it is also how you engage the talent. Today, engaged talent will be more passionate and more serious on the job, as well as the skill enhancement also is a part of engagement. So if you are innovating, if you try to innovate your way of working, you will find there are 100 ways of innovating the work of HR and making a contribution to the organization, rather than waiting for someone to come and tell you that yes, please innovate, because that's the need of the hour. I think I will say that, in fact, in this context.
Okay. So see, from my perspective, I think I look at HR's role in two buckets. One bucket, as Hemant very clearly pointed out, is the control function that we play, the compliance function that we play. We are the custodians of the policies, the processes, what needs to be done in the organization. So as the companies evolve and you scale up, obviously you need processes, the policies, to put a governance around how the company is run. And I think HR plays a very pivotal role. One of the roles for HR is to be the custodian and act as a control function. Obviously people don't like it, because who likes the fact that you are trying to control? But fortunately or unfortunately, you have to play that role. And that's only one dimension of the HR role that gets played. I think more critical dimension of the HR role is the partnering role, the business partnering role. And I think majority of the HR workforce needs to do a lot on that dimension, because that dimension requires, as my co-panelist mentioned, is that you need to demonstrate ROI. You know, when you say that you need to be a HR business partner, what it means is that whatever you do, apart from the control function is not a business, it is required to run the business in a certain manner. It helps you to scale up. You can't scale up the organization without policies and processes. But on the business side, HR business partnering side, anything that you try to do, whether it is employee engagement, it is talent acquisition, it is learning and development, my belief is that we've not taken a next step in terms of establishing the relationship between what HR does in employee engagement and the ROI it generates for business. So let me give you an example. The first casualty in times of recession is L&D. So you try to start cutting, you can't cut certain things, which require to run the company operationally. But as HR professionals, have we been able to demonstrate beyond doubt the ROI that gets generated because people get trained or people's skill gets enhanced? So it is one thing to say to the CEO that yes, you train and it leads to productivity. It is one thing to say it, and it is another thing to demonstrate it. Hence, I would say that in future what HR people need to do is that they need to demonstrate the ability to build linkage between their HR programs and how they really in a quantifiable manner demonstrate the business productivity, the return on investment, the top line growth, the profitability, whatever your business metrics is. You need to establish relationship between your work and that. And that's where we have failed. And we have failed primarily because we always believe that HR is a very soft function. It is a very soft function. You need empathy. Actually, I tell you something, frontline managers in my company who are sales managers, who manage 20, 25 people need more empathy than my HR people. Because they are the people who are managing 20, 25 people complex teams. The empathy and the softer dimension of emotional quotient, which people normally attribute to HR function, is needed more by people managers and frontline managers as compared to the HR team. So what we've done is that we have reduced the entire HR function to a situation where we believe it is a soft function, and we are, as a function, not able to demonstrate in a very quantifiable manner as to how do you establish the linkage between what you do and what it means to business. So I think these are two dimensions. Please wear your control hat. It is required to scale up the organization, but please focus more on the other dimension, which is business partnering.
Thanks, Avdesh. So we kind of heard the current role of HR and possible pitfalls and what it can emerge to. I have a last question here, and then we can get into questions with the audience. And this is around how our social fabric is changing. We're becoming nuclear, and we are saying there is more independence and more identity requirement, and that's what the whole millennial workforce is all about. So we talk a lot about this workforce and its impatience, but very rarely do we talk about the impatience of the corporates. Very rarely do we talk about why suddenly retrenchment happens when earning per share falls in a quarter. Now, is that impatience a nature of our society which is getting reflected? And what role would a professional play? And I'm not getting limited to HR. I'm saying a professional who's part of an organization play in balancing this. The employee wants, fair amount of freedom, fair amount of challenging jobs. I can take the risk and move. And the company is also saying, yeah, you move, I move. Right? So is that something that's we're going to be dealing with?
So, see, I think this millennial subject has been debated a lot. My take on this one is very simple. See, first of all, I do not believe that there is a broad brush with which you can paint the characteristics of this workforce. And I tell you why, because my personal experience is that the tier 2, tier 1 and tier 3 city millennials behave differently. What drives them in terms of careers, what drives them in terms of what kind of profession they want to choose. See, go to a tier 3 city, job is important. Getting into an organization is important. Come to tier 1, he's not worried about job, he's got multiple jobs. He's asking you a question, What kind of job? In tier 3 is the job. And we are talking about same kind of people, 21, 22, whatever you want to define, people born after 90 or... So my belief is that the social economic background, the regional background, where people are coming from, where these millennials are coming from, they define the kind of characteristics and what is going to drive what they want out of workplace or what they want out of employers. I can go to a tier 2 city and hire in hordes or tier 3 city. So that is one take on, please don't assume that every millennial behaves in a similar manner. There is a segmentation there. And hence your approach has to be segmented. Within the organization, I would say I've got a call center running in the company that population's needs, what they get driven by is different as compared to people who are working in marketing and risk. And obviously we are hiring people from very different kind of places as well. My only request there would be to, like you do customer segmentation, please look at your employee segmentation, deep dive into it. There's a lot of data, study that data. There has to be a scientific temper when you look at some of these things and see what kind of logical employee segmentation can be done. And they could be, by the way, the millennials could be in all these 3 departments. And trust me, I'm telling you, my conversation with some of these millennials tells me they are driven by different kind of things. A person coming into marketing and risk, you know what he says? Tell me what to do. I've learned so much. Can you give me work which is flexible? Can you give me work which will excite me? It's not about money. Money I'll get. Can you give me some project where I can demonstrate what I'm capable of? Can you give me project where I can use my potential to the fullest? And on the other hand, you have a call center where the needs are very different, So my belief is that employee segmentation is going to be the key. Like, for example, in compensation, what did we do? We said people who are getting older, they need pension, and people who are younger, they don't care about pension, they need flexibility in terms of cash. So we came out, we as HR people innovated a product called, Flexi Benefits. My belief is that this, the entire workforce is going to be extremely segmented to the extent that I look at whether technology can actually enable a very individual benefit package or very individual intervention. I don't know whether it is possible. The future organization is going to be extremely segmented and your approach is going to be highly segmented. Rather than doing a very broad brush that this is how millennials behave and this is how this kind of population behaves.
Thank you. I think that's a great insight into millennials and your personal experience of this. 2 aspects to your question, Gaurav. You started off by saying nuclear families and how does it impact the workforce and so forth. My personal assessment, sense, whatever I've seen is there is a sense of anchoring we all require. Yeah? And nuclear families over the years have provided that stroke, those anchorings and so forth over a period of time, which may not necessarily exist in a nuclear family today, with 2 parents working, 1 kid at home trying to figure out how to use his time or her time and so forth. And the kid growing up to join the workforce and figuring out, so what does appreciation really mean for me? I'm educated, I'm qualified, and so forth. So the whole idea of motivation somewhere gets influenced. Our traditional insight on motivation has been around what we've studied for years of a Maslow or a Herzberg and so forth, and the carrot and the stick and so forth. Here is a guy who's telling us, you know what, I have enough carrots in my refrigerator to last me another 10 years. I don't need a carrot. What I really need, and my carrot is different. It's not incentive, talking about segmentation and so forth. It's very different. So what is that carrot? In fact, there is some seminal work by Daniel Pink, done in a book by the name of Drive. If you lay your hands on that, must read for all HR professionals, in the way the motivators are shifting from where they were to where they are today. He talks about sense of purpose, for example, is a big motivator for people. What am I contributing beyond myself for that monthly salary that I'm taking? A sense of mastery. How is this job getting me better at what I do and creating future prospects is another piece. And a sense of autonomy. I know my job, don't bother me. You want a result, I'll get you a result. So those become great motivators as we go forward, rather than the notions of what we've carried as motivators over a period of time. Yeah.
Okay. In fact, I mean, it's so funny we give these names Gen X, Gen Y, Millennials. I mean, I think it's now only Gen Wi-Fi, no Gen Y. It's only Gen Wi-Fi. Again, the challenges and the issues may differ from organization to organization. I mean, if you are in a consulting or a knowledge firm, your challenges with the millennials may not happen immediately, but over a period of time. But if there are other organizations where maybe you're in retail or you are in BPO where the challenges are present as we speak. But then how these people are wired is that they don't need performance management. They need coaching. They need mentorship. They don't want to be bound in a framework where you have goals, you have targets, and of course they are competitive.